All right. It is October 16th in the morning. Um, Folks, let's just cut right to the chase. I'm feeling pretty good. Okay. I'm feeling pretty good about this campaign. Early vote data, which have to be analyzed with a lot of care and thought, but they that can be done. And so far, the data look pretty good in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and in North Carolina. So looking pretty good. So I asked Hanson Hosein to join us today. Hanson is a kind of international consultant and thought leader on communication as a tool for inspiration, for guidance, for vision. And Hanson's, you've done a lot of things with us at CP. So I asked you to come by and to talk with us about the narrative, the kind of closing narratives that we're seeing from each campaign. Okay, so thanks. Let's give Trump like 2 minutes, and then we're going to devote the rest of this to Harris. Okay, so go ahead, give it to us in like the simplest nutshell. What is Trump's closing argument?
Trump is really trying to appeal mostly to men, it feels like, and men, white men, brown men, black men. And I came up with this new line. He's trying to set 1,000 little Reichstag fires. And what I mean by that is that in the 1930s, when Hitler was trying to come to power, his folks set a fire at the Reichstag, the national parliament in Germany, and blamed it on the communists. And that really sort of motivated people to vote for his party, thinking there was a huge threat. He's been doing that with the immigrants in Aurora and in Springfield,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
really trying to elevate that fear, and that's playing into especially men's fear about their standing currently in society, and that's his closing argument from what I can tell. And he's got Elon Musk on his side who's really amplifying the same thing.
Yeah, he's got Fox News, Newsmax, all the cable TV news outlets. He's got talk radio, the conservative talk radio is Hannity et al. On talk radio, and now he's got Musk and X/Twitter. That all of these folks amplify this highly racialized attack on vulnerable populations, all to supposedly show his toughness, right? His strength, his power.
It's impunity tied to masculinity. And it's something that a lot of men are feeling they're being disenfranchised. And I think that appeals to them. And that's why we're seeing that bit of weakness with brown and black men thinking they're more on Trump's side than on Harris, at least a portion of that percentage that's traditionally gone to the Democrats.
Yeah. So what I've learned over many years of studying and thinking about, and now being engaged in the political um, combat of campaigns, and usually this is rhetorical, but not always, is that a candidate has to make a decision about whether they're going to go after their opponent's weaknesses or to go after what their opponent says is their strength. All right. So in famous fashion in 2004, John Kerry was running on himself as a veteran for the United States and was positioning himself as a military man who could handle the war in Iraq, okay, and the war on terror. And even when he came out at the Democratic National Convention, he even came out and he saluted and he said, Lieutenant Kerry reporting for duty. All right. In response to that, the Bush campaign went straight at his claims about service and undermined them in really duplicitous ways. All right. And it's famously known as the swift boating of John
That's
Kerry.
right. It became a verb, right? He got swift boated.
Exactly. The argument that's there was an organization that Bush et al. Created called that Karl Rove et al. Created Swift Boat Veterans for Truth. And they swift boated Kerry and took out that strength of his. So that was a strategy, and Republicans generally are better at going at the claimed strength of Democrats than Democrats are going at the claimed strength of Republicans. But in this case, I think Harris is going directly, dead aim, at this argument, this claim that Trump et al. Is strong, okay, is somehow strong. And so I want to show two clips that really capture what I hear her saying. And the first one was Sunday in North Carolina, and the second one was yesterday on her audio interview with Charlemagne the God on the podcast that he has called The Breakfast Club. And as a communications person, when I see words and ideas being repeated by candidates, I know that this is intentional. This is a strategy, right? They don't keep repeating things that don't work or that they don't want to keep saying. So everybody's been kind of waiting for Harris to come back and go strong at Trump. All the folks in CP world are like, come on, when's she going to go back at him hard? Because he's horrible, he's horrible, he's horrible. I think she launched what we'll call her closing argument Sunday in Raleigh. And I use that phrase, the closing argument, intentionally. She's a prosecutor, all right? She knows how to close an argument. And that closing argument has as its centerpiece, the claim that Trump is weak, he's not strong, all right? And I don't want to cut her words because it's most powerful when you hear it from her. So I'm going to play this clip from North Carolina, Raleigh, Sunday. And then I'll play the clip from yesterday on the audio with Charlemagne. Here she is in North Carolina.
Here's the thing. It makes you wonder. Why does his staff want him to hide away? One must question, are they afraid that people will see that he is too weak and unstable to lead America? Is that what's going on?
And are you able to see the clip, Hanson? Were you able to see that? So
yeah, totally.
She looks right
at, and I heard it.
Right? She looks right at the camera when she says weak and unstable. Like, come get me, Donald. Come get me. So I want to show that clip again because I want everybody to pay attention to the way she looks right at the camera and says, come on, let's go.
And here's the thing. It makes you wonder. Why does his staff want him to hide away? One must question, are they afraid that people will see that he is too weak and unstable to lead America?
Right there.
Is that what's going on? And here's the thing.
Okay, so she gives this Sunday in North Carolina, and I got to, and I'm not asking for your reaction yet, but I got to tell CP Nation, I see this speech on Sunday, and I'm jumping up and down. All right, I'm like, come on, bring it, man, bring it. And I'm hoping like this is the closing argument, right? Stick with it, go with it. Okay, so then yesterday she goes out on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, really an audience strong among African-American men. All right. And here she goes again. And when I heard her, because this was broadcast live on MSNBC and CNN, the whole interview, it was remarkable, even though there was no video. It was just audio. That's all it was. And so they get the audience that they're looking for, plus they got the CNN and MSNBC audience. Okay. So we see that on Sunday in North Carolina. Here she is 2 days later. And when you're looking for strategy, folks, if you see a message that's delivered one day and then you see it elevated, amplified, and really gone after a day or two later, that's intentional, folks.
And again, here's Charlemagne, one of the things that I think is really ironic, but at play. Donald Trump, through his way of trying to name call and demean and divide, tries to project as though those things are a sign of strength, when in fact the man is really quite weak. He's weak. It's a sign of weakness that you want to please dictators and seek their flattery and favor. It's a sign of weakness that you would demean America's military and America's service members. It's a sign of weakness that you don't have the courage to stand up for the Constitution of the United States and the principles upon which it stands. This man is weak and he is unfit.
Okay, that's 6 weeks. 6 week WEAK. 6 weeks or weaknesses in a 1-minute clip. Folks, that's a closing argument. All right, Hanson, tell us what's going on here.
I'm glad you showed those two clips, David, and not the clip of Trump dancing to his Spotify playlist for 45 minutes, which actually Harris also did respond to as part of her argument, her closing argument about weak and unstable. What presidential candidate does that at a campaign rally? That's crazy. So I think there's two really important things going on here in this closing argument of hers and of yours, David. First of all, there's this real sense, not just in the United States, but around the world, that in a time of great complexity and a lack of trust, we want a strong man in power. You're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in other countries. And so this whole idea of demagoguery, and this is part of Trump's appeal, especially to men, that he is a strong man. So she's going right for the jugular on that, saying he's not a strong man. Yeah, he's in love with other strong men, but that's exactly the opposite. He is not. He's weak and he's unstable. So that's a really powerful argument. Secondly, and I think this one's even more important, is that, as you have noted on this podcast with Charles, that Harris has been actually appealing to Republicans as well, who might find Trump too chaotic, too anti-establishment, too revolutionary for the world that they want to inhabit. Frankly, inflation is down, the economy is strong, the stock market is up. All the things that Republicans cherish in terms of stability are happening under a Democratic president and will be continued under a new Democratic president. So what she's looking forward to do here is she's striking a weakness as well in terms of support for Trump among more sort of able-minded Republicans who think that Trump is just too chaotic for what he's going to bring to the table, including more inflation given his policies.
And she also is attempting to shore up support among African American men, right? And African American men may well be attracted to Trump's claims of masculinity, right? And so for her to go on Charlemagne and to hit it so strong right there, and it isn't just the words, it is the strength in the voice, the tonality too. It is the difference between when I talk to students of mine who are doing job interviews, who are doing them over the phone, which is not an uncommon thing in academia to do a phone interview. I always say, stand up while you're doing the call. All right, stand up, don't sit, because there is a different body energy. Your voice comes from a different place. And so I hear her in both that clip, the Raleigh clip in North Carolina, where she stops, looks at the camera and says, come on, come on. And then in the Charlemagne clip where she elevates her tone of strength and of he is weak. All right, he is weak and unstable. I feel this, like, this is what I want, man. This is what I want. I wanted a candidate that could deliver, who could prosecute the case. All right, who could prosecute the case. And I never felt that Joe Biden this year was going to be able to deliver that. All right. And I feel like Harris is prosecuting the case. And yeah, I'm using that verb intentionally because of her prosecutorial background, but I think it matters. She understands that she's talking to a jury right now, right?
I think that's a good point too, David, because I believe there's a correlation between masculinity and economic security. And so if Trump is portraying himself as this guy who was on The Apprentice, who was firing people, who's a billionaire, who's really good and strong in economics, and he's a tough guy, that will appeal to young men and men who think that things are shifting beneath their feet economically. So if Harris goes for that, and that's really going for that argument, that really does weaken where Trump is strong. So I think that's a strong point on your point of view.
So do you think, like, imagine you're in the strategy room of Harris and they're talking about going after Trump on weak and unstable. And is there a risk for Harris here at all, or is it mostly just upside for her?
Well, part of the criticism of Harris is that she's been seen as weak on policy, and obviously, and so the question is whether what she's criticizing Trump for, she could be refracted back upon her. But I think at this stage, where we're in the last few weeks of this campaign, she's got to go for that jugular, and where Trump really is trying to portray himself as what he represents to these people. So I don't see too much of a weakness here in terms of going about this. She, what's really interesting to me, I just finished reading Yuval Harari. He's a historian. Yuval Harari's latest book called Nexus, and he's talking about how
What's it called?
communication. It's called Nexus, and so Hariri is a historian from Jerusalem, and he's been very famous for his books Homo Sapiens and Homo Deus, where he talks about storytelling and technological information revolutions that disrupt how we tell stories around ourselves. And this most recent book was really interesting because he's talking about AI, and his big observation is that it's really powerful right now that conservatives and parties like the Republican Party have become the revolutionary party, while progressive parties and parties like the Democrats have become more the institutional parties, trying to shore up existing institutions. And so what I'm seeing here in this sort of final narrative that's going on in the last few weeks is that Harris is trying to come across as an establishment candidate. As much as folks want change in America, people are quite concerned around the disruption and chaos that Trump brings to the table. And so I think that's where she's trying to portray strength, that she's going to uphold the Constitution, that the institutions that we all trust, as opposed to Trump that wants to rip them all down.
And I think that has a lot of appeal to economic conservatives who have made peace with Trump's racism and sexism. Like, they're going to live with it if he can deliver the economy and the tax cuts that they want. But when he unstable and wanders around a stage for 30 minutes, or goes to an economic forum in Chicago yesterday and dismisses everything that these folks say about tariffs, okay, about the way in which tax cuts are going to blow up for the wealthy, tax cuts will blow up the deficit, and dismisses all that, I feel like his chaos thing, what was it, Bannon's phrase back, like disruption, right? Or Steve Bannon back in 2016 or something, we're the chaos candidate, or we're the disruptors. And of course that goes back to Mark Zuckerberg's things, break things and move fast kind of phraseology. Like, that piece has lost its appeal to people who do want to make money. All right. They can live with the racism and sexism of Trump. And that's, personally, I got a real problem with that, but they've made that decision. But when he's unstable, they lose money, right? And the markets tank and tariffs go up. And I feel like he's giving them nothing right now, nothing to convey that, hey, I am stable. I am. Like, he is feeding the message too. Like, when you wander around a stage, you feed the message. You confirm to those that are like, what is Trump? Is he really unstable? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And so his imagery too is not helping him.
No, that's right. And I think even the tariffs argument, which he's made very recently, is very much red meat to blue collar workers. And as we're seeing that happening in union membership. But at the same time, as you know, a strong indicator of who's going to win the presidency is that if the stock market is up leading into the election, it's usually the incumbent that wins. And so the stock market is up. So if you're looking at Republicans or conservatives who actually have more assets and are invested that way, they're going to say, well, things are pretty good for me right now. And as much as I like a lot of the other stuff that Trump is talking about, I don't want that to disrupt my situation. And so that's where I think Harris is also addressing that. You talked about in a more recent podcast, Harris's line, hard work is good work. And I thought it was a great line, but I could see that going straight to appealing to conservatives, successful conservatives who would say, yeah, that's what we're all about. Hard work is good work.
That also feeds the I am strong, he is weak. Like, we can handle hard work, right? We can handle hard work. We're not afraid of hard work, right? And so I don't think like this is counter to what Hillary Clinton had to say in 2016. I think she also pointed out how he was wrong and mistaken and was endanger the U.S. But I didn't feel it was as visceral of a at the core level of character critique of Trump, the way that Harris is delivering it as a core critique of his character. For Clinton, I always felt she was smarter, right? She's smarter, but I always felt he was more powerful and dominating. I don't feel that he's dominating in the same way with Harris.
Well, I think 8 years later, the Democrats, the gloves are finally off because they realize what they're dealing with right now. So this whole idea of decorum in speech and politics is gone, and they know that they have to fight that way as well. We saw that with Michelle Obama convention, right? We're no longer taking the high road on this thing. Also, what's interesting is that Hillary did sort of put herself out there as the first female candidate for president. We know that Harris has really downplayed both her
Doesn't
gender
talk about it at
and her
all.
ethnicity.
Yeah.
And even as Trump is talking about, mass deportations and immigration, she hasn't come out very hard on that because she knows that immigration is a hot topic right now. So she's playing it really carefully in terms of not coming across as a radical. She wants to be as palatable as possible to as many sort of straight thinking people as possible out there in the United States, because she knows that Trump is capturing that radical fringe in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, she's going today. Also on this point, as we begin to wrap up, she is also taking all interviews. She's doing all interviews. Like, you want to do an interview? Come on, let's go. So
and Trump is declining interviews and opportunities now, right?
Exactly. So the contrast is like the treadmill of the contrast is going. Okay. Like, it's just, he's feeding it. She's feeding it. She's going on Fox today. All right. With Brett Baer.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Like, that's how you just show people, like, I'm cold-blooded. I'm fearless. Right.
I also felt, from a storytelling point of view, when she was getting criticized early on in her campaign for not doing those live interviews, I had a feeling she was holding her fire.
Okay.
That she knew that she was going to have some kind of momentum building into those final weeks, given the shortness of her candidacy. And so had to be offering novelty close to the end. And so my feeling is that this is by design, that she was always ready to do these kind of interviews, but she didn't want to have it all happen early on, that now is the time to do it as momentum is building leading up to the election.
That's consistent with she has been. I have the strong feeling, and what I read, but also just in her own body language, that she is ambitious in driving this campaign. She's like, I want at him. I want at him. I want to go do those interviews. And so you can feel it now, like she's unleashed to do this. And I think that totally, again, fits the narrative of Harris is strong and willing to take everything on as it comes, and Trump is afraid. He cancels interviews. He won't do another debate. He stops doing Q&A at his rally because he doesn't want to keep doing it. So he's afraid. He's weak. He can't handle it.
And she has to do that as you said, she has to address that as Trump's weakness, but she's got to address that as her weakness, her perceived weakness as well, as a female candidate, that she has to come across as stronger than a man.
Yep,
that's the real, and so that's part of her play as well.
She does. That is absolutely true, that as a woman, she has to double convey it, but she never says that. Right.
No,
she
knows that she can't, and she shouldn't.
Right. Like, you can't walk in and say, so I'm a woman, and so here's what I'm doing, right? No, you don't. You just do it, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate this conversation about closing arguments and about Harris. I feel like Trump doesn't have anything new to offer at this point. He doesn't. His argument has been about immigration and has been racist and sexist from the beginning. All he can do is be more of that. He doesn't have anything piece that he's offering, whereas she's offering policy still, and this kind of like, I'm doing all interviews piece. I think that's really an effective approach. So
yeah, and if you have to think about that closing argument on her behalf, there's been this thought that she's really appealing to what they're calling the silent majority. And the silent majority are Republicans who are thinking that Trump is really unhinged, but don't want to admit it publicly. And so I think that's part of her closing argument as well.
Yeah, right. They don't want to admit it, that he's unhinged, right? Unhinged that's the goal here. That's like the visual she's going for. Unhinged. The dude is weak and unstable.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, Hanson, thanks a lot for your time. All right.
Thank you. Good to see you,
see ya.
David. All right, bye.